good to go? Lindsay, you good? Okay. All right. Good evening. Call the meeting to order.
Mrs. De Silva,
Here.
Mrs. Gillis,
Here.
Mr. Melody,
Here.
Mrs. Rigby,
Here.
and Mr. Valentine.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Kern, will you lead us this evening? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the regular minutes for the July 17th regular meeting. Excuse me, recommended approval of the June 12th regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Gillis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Approval of regular work session minutes. Recommended approval of the June 29th, 2023 regular work session meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Melody. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Gillis. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Abstain.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes. Motion passes 4-0. Approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rigby. Questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to public participation for this evening. Nobody is signed up. As I flip through here, old school style. Board President, Board of Education comments. Any reports out from Board of Education committees? All right. There being none, the student representative update. And Dr. Marshausen, if you want to speak before.
We are excited to welcome our rising seniors, the class of 24, to our board meetings. We have yet to meet as a group yet, but we welcome the three of you who are here tonight and invite you to give your first report.
Sorry, this is my first mic. I think we are all excited to be here, and I'm very excited to meet with Dr. Marshausen. I'm Cadence Lynn. Okay, cool. I'm one of the senior reps as well, and our report starting off for tonight is our general goals. So we're connecting with more students when we present, and we're communicating and doing an outreach process with our fellow students to fully embody the student voice. We're doing this by creating an Instagram. We are trying to get an official email. We are meeting with our principals and talking about forums. We're talking about advice that they can give us so we can be better representatives for the students overall. Some highlights going on this summer. 4th of July, students volunteered for the City of Dublin 4th of July celebration, and all 3 marching bands performed in a parade. There is the beginning of fall sports for all 3 schools. Students are representing our district all across the state with programs like Girls State, Boys State, Speech and Debate, and upcoming Model UN. And then for senior stuff, overall senior stuff, AP scores came in, so that was nerve-wracking for all of us, I think, to wait that long. And then we are starting out with Common Apps and getting ready for college or our future paths. Some other construction updates. We have Coppin construction going on, so there's a lot of great things coming in for our school, like the turf, which is good. Students are super excited for like the renovations, especially for our school sports and some things like that. Some students in the Coppin community were concerned with possible missed home games with the turf, but there was a Coppin staff clarification post, so now more students know that we will have our time in our homecoming game. Hopefully once we begin our outreach task, we can gain more student suggestions for the board and gain more possible concerns and possible praises. And then I would just like to say that the other student reps and I are so excited to work and build a connection with all of you. I and all of us have immense respect for all the effort that you put in to better our school district. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Did you want us to ask questions like you asked before?
Can we have them just
Absolutely.
introduce themselves again?
Yeah.
And
Which
say,
school you're
yeah,
from.
which school you're from.
Thank you so much for your report. That was amazing. Just out of curiosity, how are you doing outreach for Instagram, or is that like your main? I don't understand how that works, so I'm just asking, how do you know what students to add, or does that make any sense?
Yeah, so we are currently working with the school to create an official Instagram for our representatives. It's definitely outreach, I think, more to clubs, you know, all around the school district, all around our schools. I think that's the first thing. And then, you know, just getting our name out there just to let them know that we are in our roles. And I think having a social media and interacting with Kaufman and Jerome and Scioto and all the schools online will be helpful for us to outreach to students.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? All right, there being none, thank you again. Reports and action items from the superintendent's office. Dr. Marshausen.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. A couple clarifications as we get questions about the upcoming and potential levy requests that the board will be asked to take the final step tonight. We've been asked several times, why now? And why in November of 2023? And there are a couple of things that we've highlighted over the past several board meetings and conversations that we've had in public. And I know parts of this slide are small for us to see from this distance. This presentation will be posted tomorrow and will be sent in an e-news so that the community will have access to each of these slides as well as the comments from tonight. Our growth is here. We have those 12 modulars up at Dupp Elementary, and the sooner that we are able to issue bonds, the sooner that construction can get started. Our commitment was to open that building in August of 2025, and that is still our goal. As we look at supply chain issues and the incredible need for local resources in the Columbus area, waiting until 2024 to get that construction started would jeopardize that building being ready for August of 2025. So one is timing. The second issue and the second bullet point is cost. The demand for construction resources in Columbus and Central Ohio is high. In 2018, the costs per square foot for our building projects was in the area of $286 per square foot. Our latest estimates are $515 per square foot. As we start to approach double the cost for what it was to build a DEP or a Hopewell, the sooner we're able to get contracts issued and prices locked in, the more responsible we are for our taxpayers as we look to build this additional building. It's also important to note that the foresight of this board in obtaining property when property was available is a hallmark of Dublin school boards in the past, and it is something that we continue to be able to do because as we have land that's ready for development, it allows us to begin this process so that we're able to get construction projects going. The school district had owned the land that Hopewell sat on for 30 years before we needed to build Hopewell there. And this board purchased several years ago the property that was the Riviera property. And that foresight and planning allows us to say to our voters, if we pass this now, we can be open and ready in August of 2025. We also know that waiting longer would result in a higher levy ask for those operating funds. Passage in November of 23 allows collections to start in the 24 calendar year. Waiting until any time in 2024 would delay that collection until the 25 calendar year, which would mean a higher ask. Also, as we look and we debated November versus March, if the voters reject the request from the Board of Education, it gives more time for implementation and planning of both the required redistricting of our elementary students and the reductions in force that would need to be made if the voters reject the plan. If the voters reject, the district will look very different for the 24-25 school year. And we are also anticipating a higher voter turnout in November of 2023. There will be 2 statewide issues that will generate significant interest and significant motivation for voters to come to the ballot box in November. And we know as a school district that the more people who participate in the democracy and the more people who are engaged in the voting process, historically, the better turnout it's been and the better outcome it's been for the school district. So when looking at why now, those are 5 bullet points that talk about why we would ask for this now. As we look,
Jump in on that, on the levy operating side. We're at 7.9 with this request. Theoretically, what would we potentially be looking at under a scenario where we were either asking in 24 or it doesn't pass and we're coming back in 24?
why don't you take what it would be if we waited, and I'll take if it doesn't pass.
So we're definitely in double digits. We're probably around 14.9 potentially from that standpoint. Chris, debating on, depending on how much, if we added some reductions in the meantime along with it. But just from a sheer standpoint as operating status quo, you're at least looking at 14.9. So that's just not probably doable for our public from that standpoint. And, we waited as long as we could. From that standpoint, it's been 5 years from our last ask. The time before that was 6. But we're here. Historically, if you look back over time, it's 3 to 4 years. So there again, we've extended those timelines a little bit, but we've waited to the point of can't wait any longer from that standpoint.
And Mr. Valentine, if it doesn't pass, the amount will be dependent on the depth of the cuts that we make. We will bring to the board a list end of July, beginning of August. We will begin to circulate and bring to the board for your approval in August a list that would extend the district into a positive cash balance an additional year. And so we're probably looking at in the neighborhood of $35 to $40 million in cuts if we're not successful in November, so that without the approval, we have to assume and we have to run the district as if it's not going to pass the next time. So we have to make those cuts that would give the additional year of solvency, as we're not allowed to borrow money. So we would make cuts that would allow us to extend the district's cash balance an additional year.
Just to go off of that real quick, because I had some questions that I put together that kind of go down this path. So as we talk about potential cuts, and talk about our operating budget. 85.5% or so is wages, salaries, benefits. Obviously, from our overall operating budget, there's only so much in that other 15% that we will be able to cut in a meaningful way. Scott and I have seen this over the years in our time with some of the decisions that we've had to make, but theoretically, what does that cut look like in terms of classroom sizes, where I think inevitably this is going to be felt the most across the district?
Yeah, I think when you look at, there are two things that rejection of this levy would mean. One is a lack of space. So increasing class sizes across the board creates additional space in all of our buildings. So if we look over the next 3 years, if this levy were rejected in November of '23, now the soonest a new building would open would be '26. So we would have to find a place for 800 elementary students across the district. So right now, the commitment from the 2018 levy to our community and to our teachers were class sizes of 24 K-1, 26 2-3, 28 4-5. And when you hear us talk 24, 26, 28, that's what we're talking about, is those class size caps. We would probably be looking at going 28 K-1 and 30 2-5. So that creates space for 100 additional students at every elementary school. So from a space perspective, we would be looking at every every elementary attendance area would have redistricting, and you would be looking at some significant redistricting of your Bailey attendance zone, your Scottish Wyandotte attendance zones, as those students would move south. From an operating standpoint, when you look at classes those sizes, you're looking at the potential of reducing 4 to 5 teachers per elementary school. When you look at the secondary, right now our target is classes of 25 in our middle schools and high schools. If those targets go to 30 and you place floors on a class which says you're not going to operate a class with less than 19 or less than 20, you're probably looking in the area of 50 middle school and 50 high school, or more than 50 high school teacher reductions. You're also looking at students being frozen out of classes and having to make other choices. And you're looking at potentially some of the options that we are currently able to provide not being things that we could provide. If you look in the neighborhood of $40 million, you're probably looking at 200 employees, give or take. There would also be reductions administratively to the administrative team, to the coaching team, if we got to that point. So it would be evenly distributed, and you're entirely right. It is, we are in the people business, and the meaningful reductions come in the area of salary and benefits.
So as we talk about this elementary school, obviously class sizes, and as we talk about the older ages, class sizes being one component, but potentially class offerings and or opportunities that we currently provide that would in some cases be either more difficult or would not be a part of our offerings.
Correct. And as we look at what makes Dublin Dublin, and one of the things that the community over time has spoken loud and clear to you as a board, including in 2018, is those class sizes are important. The neighborhood elementary schools are important. How we provide our special education services is important. How we provide our EL services is important. And as we compare to other districts, we do those things in a way that our community has come to expect and appreciate. When you have a child in a first grade classroom and you know there are going to be 24 or less kids in that classroom, that matters. And those are things that have become part of expectations from Dublin parents. And one of our jobs as a leadership team over the next 3 to 4 months is to communicate the why, to share how we got to where we are. And so every taxpayer has the opportunity to make a decision based on what they want for the Dublin City Schools. And ultimately, at the end of the day, as your two employees, Mr. Kern and I will run the district that the voters choose to support financially. And if there are changes that need to be made to live within our means, that's the role of Mr. Kern and I, is to run that district. I would never tell anyone how to vote. Our role is to lay out the facts of where we are financially, where we are facilities-wise, and to allow democracy to work in Dublin. And that is to give the voters the choice. What would they like to see from the school district in the future?
Thank you.
Just one thing to add on the previous slide about the construction costs increasing. We are doing, talked about it previously, the additions at tolls for high bay labs. And we did see like a 40% increase from the last time when they originally estimated the project to implementation today. So that definitely is a real thing, the increase in construction costs.
Yeah, and Jeff could speak to this if I'm not giving enough detail. Just the cost of concrete in Central Ohio and the cost of structural steel and getting those resources when you're up against the Hondas and the Intels and all of the growth that's associated with those places. The shortages are real, and from Econ 101, it's a supply and demand that is part of what we're facing in Central Ohio.
Before you go on, Brian, could you speak to the 7.9 mills, if we go on the ballot in November versus the 14.9 that you mentioned before, and what it's been historically, like what the levies have been historically?
Yeah, historically, we've been in that 7-9 range. From the standpoint of I think the highest we've been is 8.99 back in the late 80s with that. This last time was 5.9 in 2018. So we're historically in that range. Is that kind of what you're looking for, Mrs. De Silva? Yeah, from that standpoint. So in the range, and just from that standpoint too is, and I think you're gonna hit the House Bill 920 slides, and I'll talk about vote it versus effective millage and stuff like that too at that time.
Thank you.
One of the things that we committed to as part of Journey 2030, and we're getting a little bit ahead, but I think it's important that we get ahead of this right now, is that master facilities component. In addition to that elementary 15 that we've talked about at Riviera, this bond issue, which is a no new millage component for the bond portion, will include updates to the middle school sites that you see here, updates to the high school sites at all three high schools, as you see here, and some elementary upgrades as well. All of this would be part of that bond, in addition to a $7.5 million expansion of the preschool. And when we look at our preschool, Mr. Andres, 2025 is when we run out of room there?
That's correct.
And can you speak a little bit about the model that we use and why that space is so important for our preschool here in Dublin?
Yeah, our preschool is a special education or special needs preschool. And so half of the students that attend our preschool are what we call peers. They're great peer models for our kids with disabilities. And the other half are students with disabilities. The law requires that we serve kids starting on their 3rd birthday. So it's not like we don't have the ability to say we're just not going to have a preschool. It's a requirement under federal law. And so that's when Dr. Marshausen says in 2025, when we renovated that space, we did the very best we could with the square footage to take our preschools from the elementaries, bring them into a central location, opening up classes at our elementaries to be able to increase students in their schools. But we've seen a very large increase in the number of preschool students that we have, kids with disabilities, that will ultimately funnel up into elementary, middle, and high school. But yeah, by 2025, that building will be full. We run an AM and a PM session, so 16 in the morning, 16 in the afternoon. And by expanding that building, we'll be able to keep up with the growth for our youngest learners.
Just to touch on, because we talked about spaces, classroom spaces, building enrollment, theoretically, what does that look like in terms of classrooms from what we'd be looking at with the expansion to what would potentially be needed within our current existing buildings?
Specifically the preschool, we'll be able to get 6 classrooms out of the addition, and that should keep us pretty solid for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
And I think it also includes a small gym, which frees up another classroom.
You'll have a 1,600 square foot like gymnasium, so you won't have to put those motor skills in the classroom. And the 6 additional classrooms will be 900 square feet each, which is much larger than any of the classrooms in that building today. So we'll get more capacity.
I did want to talk about the no new millage real quick. You'll see on tonight on the ballot issue a list 1.99 mills as they have to do that. But if you recall from 2018, we did a $195 million and a 2 mil PI, all no new millage from that standpoint. So as we've structured, as debt is structured and paid off over time, we're taking advantage of those drops in millage. And as they happen to be able to issue this as no new millage, so they will not cost any more than the taxpayers are currently paying at that point. So I just want to remind that that's on there. In talking with the county auditor, they do have a little, Franklin County auditor, they do have a little tab on their thing, but a levy estimator will be. While it was still listed as 1.99, we'll have lack of a better word, disclaimer on it, will there allow us to say this plans, the district plans to be this a no new millage with that. So just to let you know from that standpoint.
When we look at our journey to Elementary 15, I know there have been some people who have been caught off guard by the conversation about the need for an additional elementary. Just kind of to share with the public where we've been on this journey. In January, we shared at a board meeting the cooperative strategy report, which showed the enrollment over the next 10 years and the concerns especially at Abraham Depp, Eversole Run, and Jerome High School. In February, the board approved resolutions to authorize the district to begin contract negotiations with Ford and Associates for design services. Also, in February, the board approved a resolution awarding Ford and Associates the design services. In March, operations updated the board on the goal. I'm going to have the design and costs completed by June. In May, the board approved a resolution authorizing the district to proceed with negotiations with Elford and enter into a contract. In June, schematic design, pending approval of some storm water relocation projects, and the relocating a pond was shared with the board, and the budget created, and that was submitted to the Treasurer's Department. And those operating costs were shared on July 6th. Jeff, do we have an update on where we are with the retention pond relocation project?
Yes, we do. So the current land we have for the Riviera Elementary 15 has a water retention pond, and the odd thing is that the pond is about 80% on our property and 20% on the city's property. The city has a small easement, and then after that there's some residential housing. So we have been working with the city since March on the best way to handle this, because it's a shared waterway, and we're building the school's actually being built right where the waterway is. That's just how it works out best for use of the land. So what we've come up with the city is, and this will be a nice savings for the taxpayers, that we were going to put the retention pond underground because it's a safety piece, so the kids aren't in there, and then we can also have more usable land. But there's a considerable cost to do that. The city likes having the retention pond above for the residents because it's a nice thing to see and for the ambiance of the area. So what we've come up with is that we're going to relocate that stormwater retention pond onto city property above ground. It'll be away from our school, so it's for the safety piece. It'll be a considerable cost savings, and the city has been very magnanimous and generous in working with us on this. But because their land is zoned in such a way where it needs to go in front of planning and zoning. The city on September 7th has booked us on the schedule. They will be presenting because it is their land, but we will be there also as explaining to P&Z why we're making this move. So pending P&Z approval of this movement of the retention pond, our goal is to get this moved by end of calendar year. And this is this is independent of the levy, because we have the funds ready for this, and we're going to have to split this waterway up no matter what when we do this. So we'd like to get this done now, and we have the dirt to fill in the pond from our Scioto project for the multi-use facility. We have a lot of extra dirt there, so it all works out this calendar year for pretty good cost savings. So again, huge thanks to the City of Dublin and their whole staffing team for working with us on this, and September 7th will be our planning and zoning date.
So as you can see, owning that land ahead of time and being proactive really allows us to look at a building construction that is on time to open in August of 25, which is when we would fill those modular classrooms. When we talk about those modular classrooms, and this is a slide that you all have seen several times, and this is the moderate projections, and you'll see in a second why I'm starting to doubt that the moderate projections are going to be high enough. But when you look at Abraham Dep and the building capacity, when you get to the 27-28 school year, we double the capacity of Abraham Dep. When you look at Eversole Run, when you get to 26-27, we start to exceed the capacity at Eversole Run. And when you look at Jerome High School with the addition in 26-27, we begin to exceed the capacity of Jerome High School, even with the 60,000 square foot addition that we have on there. So as we point to the future, this isn't the first conversation we're going to have about additional buildings and about the need for additional space in the Dublin City School District. And as I talked with a member of our community today, and we talked about the two fastest growing districts in the area, there's a reason Dublin and Olentangy are the two fastest growing districts. It's where people want to move with their children. We are the destination district in Franklin County. And if developers have the resources, parents want their students here. If parents have resources and they have students with special needs, because of the services Mr. Andrus and his team provide, we see an increase in special education enrollment because people want their children here. It is a source of pride that we are a destination district, but it is also a source of growth. That is part of the reality that we work through. When you look at where else we see growth, and the big red dot in the northwest quadrant of our district is Jerome Village. We know that there are other areas in Union County that are growing. They're not on this map right now. I know on the west side of Industrial Parkway, as you come across Mitchell DeWitt, there are housing developments there. But what we've also highlighted here are projects that have been to planning and zoning or introduced to planning and zoning in the southeast portion of the Dublin City School District, including last Wednesday when there was a proposal for Dublin Village over by the AMC Theater for the start of Bridge Park style townhouse apartments there. And the proposal was a couple hundred. The potential is a couple thousand. When we look at Metro Place, when we look at other developments that have been proposed in our community, for those who say, well, just shift more kids to Scioto, it'll solve the problem. Nope, it will not solve the problem. We have room. We could put another 250 students at Scioto now. When you look at the slide from Jerome High School, plus the potential growth taking place in the southeast portions of our district, we're going to need every seat at our high schools and then some. And when you look at where we have space in elementary schools right now, there is some space at an Indian Run or a Thomas, and that's where the short-term redistricting would need to take place if voters reject the levy in November. But if this growth also comes, now we're going to face that crunch with additional students in the south and the eastern portions of our district. So there have been some comments made, it's Jerome Village. No, it's everywhere. It's where there is space and land. And the fear becomes when you look at what happened to Anderson's, and granted, Anderson's became senior housing, but you look at some of those spaces along Sawmill where the value is now in housing and the need in Central Ohio is in housing, and people want to be in the Dublin City Schools, we're going to start to see this growth in these areas as well. So it's coming, and thanks to Cassie and her team for pulling this. These are things that were pulled directly from planning and zoning that have either been introduced or have started through the process. So it's coming.
I have a question. Or when you, I know you probably don't have these numbers now, but would it be possible to post numbers? You posted the overcapacity for the specific schools. Can you also get the numbers for the district as a whole, like what those numbers over capacity would be for the district as a whole?
Yeah, so we could do that. And really, if we wanted someone to see it, we did approve, you approved, I think in March, the capacity numbers for all of the elementary schools. Because when we did the intra-district open enrollment, we posted all of those. So I can get those to you and post them here. If someone at home is watching and they want to see those, I think that was the March board meeting where the board approved the capacity at each of our schools. And we approved intra-district open enrollment to 85% capacity. And when we use capacity numbers, as we've learned, we can exceed capacity, but when you exceed capacity, you start diminishing programs because things get bumped or moved. You end up with music on a cart, art on a cart. Some of those specials end up getting moved and those types of things. But yes, we can do that. Okay, thanks to our friends at the Columbus Dispatch, who were not inaccurate, but led to some confusion when we talk about appraised value versus taxable value and what that means to the cost to our homeowners. So Mr. Kern, 7.9 generates $276.50 for every $100,000 of appraised property value. Can you just kind of walk us through this slide, please?
Yes. And then actually tonight, when you're looking at the resolution and what the ballot issue is going to say, it talks about appraised value. So from that standpoint, so I just want to make sure that we're talking about two different things. Now, taxable value is, as you can see from this slide here, I'm going to look at it from this way, I've seen it enough, but is 35% of the appraised, or what we call slashed market value. And there again, taxable or assessed value is 35% of that. So that's how taxes are billed, and this is what the demonstration shows for those out there for the different price points. For example, 300,000 would be $829.50. 500 is about $1,382, and 800,000 is about $2,200. So from that standpoint, so that is kind of what we're looking at from that value. Any questions on what is, so the appraised or market value is what you would typically see as what the sale value, so if some would say be close to that. Now they usually, just for getting in really down in the nitty gritty here, they do truly, when they do look at that, when they look at a appraised or market value from the county auditor standpoint, they try to value it about 92% in that area, and not necessarily all 100%. That way it gives them a little leeway for people who maybe value too high or too low on either end of that kind of way they value it. So just kind of, if any questions on that. I know the dispatch used taxable value, but then forgot to clarify or add the point that it's only 35% of the appraised or market value. So
I just have one quick question. The Delaware County and Franklin County, they are both, this is their year for reappraisals, is that correct?
that is correct.
Here we go, Karama, tee up.
So reappraisal is this year. I guess what I was going to try to talk about, Mrs. De Silva, when you asked your question earlier, really, and this slide kind of really would demonstrate and talk about it is, and here's again, we have to be specific when we're using vocabulary and different other things. When we say House Bill 920, really on any voted levy, which this would be, voted millage from an operating standpoint, it as values rise over time, reappraisal, my triennial update, which would happen in another 3 years, is basically off of sales, but then 3 years after that would be a reappraisal. So full reappraisal, which is what we're going through now, is every 6 years, and then within that time period in between there is the triennial update, which is usually based off primarily just sales. So this year's Franklin and Delaware, for tax year 23, that'll start being collected in January of 24. Union County was last year, so from that standpoint. So any voted millage as the values go up, that millage goes down. And for example, and I think I emailed you today, Mrs. Rigby, that, for example, we have over time in operating, which is what we're talking about tonight in general, we have 81.8 mills that have been voted in. But we're only collecting at 38.68 mills. So like I said, over time, those have gone down. For example, the 5.9 that was collected, that was passed in 18 is only being collected at 4.9 currently. Voted at 5.9, collected at 4.9. So just for a standpoint, too, of this, maybe getting a little more in the weeds, we collect with our inside, and I'll talk about inside millage. We do get a little bit off of inside millage. I just want to say we don't get anything on reappraisal, but it's not very much. But between inside millage, which is about 4.4 mils, and then the other 38.6, we're about 43 mils of effective millage that's being billed out there to people. If we weren't to pass, if we do not pass at this time, and going into next year with the increases that you've seen, everyone's seen in the news, that will drop down to 36 mils. So we potentially could be at about the same effective millage now than we were, even if we do pass, that we are now. So we project that we'll possibly drop, and we're conservative too with our estimates, that we'll drop with this reappraisal maybe 7 mils. If nothing happens. So we go from like 43 down to be collected at about 36, 37 in those range. If that makes sense.
It does, and I know you've explained this. I just, for the benefit of those watching or somebody who might look at this, it's great to have the know your facts. I think that's terrific, but it's also great to have you talk about effective tax rate in House Bill 920, because you hear both terms being thrown around. And what does that mean to, like, if you could put it in terms of a family who might move here this year, and when are we going to start collecting, or when does the district realize those collections, for that family moving in?
Well,
And
if
what
they're
does
building
their
a new
kind of-
house,
Yes,
potentially, if they're
yes.
building a new house, they probably wouldn't start getting full assessment depending on completion of it. For example, let's say they moved in, I think I've explained this example. If they moved in this summer, they won't be fully billed, not this next year, but the year after that. So that would be tax year 24 and collection year or calendar year 2025. So that usually doesn't go on what they call the tax duplicate right away. So that's kind of what you're running into. So taxes are really assessed at where they're at January 1. So anything happens after January 1 doesn't have what's called a lien date until the following year. And I know I'm using a lot of different words here, but for someone who's building a new house, they're not going to see, now they're going to tax on partial completion, but they're not going to get taxed on the full value until the year after, or almost a year and a half, 2 years after completion, depending on when the house was finished.
And just to go big picture with this, our operating budget, and we cover this every time we go through our monthlies, but percentage that we are dependent upon local property taxes versus what we're getting from the state and federal government, which, again, I know the answer, but for the sake of folks who are listening.
Yeah, so the local property taxes that our residents and our businesses pay is about 76%. We also have what's called public utility tax, too, that our utilities pay. That's about another 4%. So they do commit. So it's 80% comes from local taxes and stuff. And then we have other things from a local side of things that we would have would be our biggest ones probably, like, for example, our revenue sharing agreement with the city of Dublin. So and different other like interest, and Medicaid is another one that we have for services. So that adds about another 4 to 5% too. So we really only have about 15% that comes from the state, 9% that comes really from when we talked about the state budget and state formula funding. That's 9% of it. That's really that. The other is the homestead and rollback deduction that each of us as property or homeowners get the 12.5% that the state does fund in property tax relief that they do give us. And if you recall, at one point they talked about eliminating some of that, and then they found out House Bill 920 kind of works in really weird ways, and even when it would have made it really convoluted and actually more expensive from that standpoint on the local homeowners. So that's from that standpoint. And so we do get a little bit from reappraisal. So we've estimated, and this is something that I told Mrs. Rigby today, we estimate from reappraisal. We only get it on our inside mills, which is 4.4 mils. And that an increase that we expect for this between Franklin and Delaware County, between the residential and the commercial, is only about 2.8 million. Is estimating. That's only 1% increase over this year. So that isn't going to, with when inflation and where we're at with different things, is not going to cover it. Yes, do we get a little bit? Yes, but it's not the huge windfall that some might think we get. So House Bill 920 rolls back that, so we don't have those huge increases. It's a small increase on the inside millage.
Real quick, before we move from this slide, I would like to suggest, I know the slides will be posted, but I think it would be helpful to have a frequently asked questions section on the Know the Facts page, because there's a lot of information on there. But this is a question that a lot of people are asking, and I think just that question there with a...
Scott, can you go to the next slide for me for a second? And
Yeah.
Mrs. De Silva, this is a very simplified graphic of 920, that if a house in 2013 had a appraised value of 300,000 and generated 3,000 in taxes, if that house doubled in property value in a 10-year period, it's still providing $3,000 in taxes. It's just the effective tax rate is half. So yes, we will put this on there, and we will continue to, the intent of Know the Facts was frequently asked questions. So these things will go on there as our struggle as a team, and I think you sense this from Mr. Kern and I. School Finance 101 is multiple courses. It's like 4. And trying to boil this down, and Scott and Chris have been doing this for 4 terms and 3 full terms, right? 4 and 5 full terms. The complexity of these tax laws and the rate at which they change, we're trying to boil it down to something that can be demonstrated. And as soon as we can, we're going to get that up there. And what I appreciate from you as board members is the questions, because you're hearing things that we don't. And as our elected officials, when constituents ask the 5 of you questions, I know Mrs. Gillis forwarded some questions that we're going to get to and get posted. You hear sometimes what we don't. So thank you, and keep encouraging us to get those answers to those questions out for the community, because ultimately that's what we want, is the facts and correct information, so that people, when they get to starting on October 10th and then with Election Day on November 8th, being able to make a decision that they're comfortable with. So thank you. We did have a couple questions that came in about some of the community development authorities and impact fees and those types of things. Those laws have drastically changed. We will get some answers about impact fees for folks. I know that Mr. Kern in his time in Olentangy, and I know in my time in previous districts, they looked at those. I think there are some real barriers, but we're going to get some of those facts together so people can understand those as well. Oh, I have the clicker. I keep looking at you.
Any other questions from House Bill 920, or I guess he went to the next slide. Any other questions that you may have? Hopefully we've covered just about anything, but feel free.
I just wanted to say, so money fuels emotion, right? And so as we're out in the community and hearing, not everybody's getting the same phone calls or texts or emails. And so I think that's important that we're sharing here as well. I know the pain that it's a tax property reevaluation year. So we're already kind of personally being hit by that, and we're asking for more money as a levy. But I think the continual thing that I'm hearing in the district is maybe there's some confusion about broken promises in 2018. So I think that we do have a slide, but I'd really love that we're reiterating, like, this is what we said, this is where the money was allocated, this is what we're doing, to just kind of really just put some facts towards that. And also factual information that, like, we are one district. And so I understand that when our growth is really large in one area and we're asking for a lot of money to go towards that one area, it might look unfair or seem unfair. But as, commercial real estate continues to change in this climate, as we saw earlier tonight, that is opening up more space for housing. And there could be an ask down the line for schools in a different area. But the one thing that is consistent is that if the levy is a no, it affects everyone the same way as well. And so I think that's, we really need to be operating as one and thinking as one, and not as a who gets what kind of mentality. And I hope that, as we go to the vote tonight and we're putting this out to our constituents, I hope that all facts are really looked at. And I understand that emotion drives first opinion. So I'm really hoping and looking forward to being able to have conversations throughout this fall.
I think as we have this.
I forgot one thing. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, because that was going to my other ask, which I've asked you about. In covering the whole district, my original thought to you was, can we have all-day kindergarten, and does that make it look fair? But then if you start breaking down where our growth is, so can you speak to and then I'll just stop talking. So
I'm going to get to one, then I'll get to two. First of all, I am exceedingly grateful the election isn't being held tomorrow. We have the rest of July, all of August, all of September, and the beginning of October to build confidence, share facts, and explain the why for each of the decisions that we make. It is incredibly important that our community knows that we are intentional and purposeful, and the process that we go through is well thought out. So yes, in any levy ask, in any political campaign, there are two sides of our brains that we have to engage. There is emotion that is based on fear or anger or whatever the emotion is, and we're asking people for, if you look at a $300,000 house, we're asking them for $900 more a year. It's real money. So there's going to be an emotion when they hear that ask. Our hope is that we can engage the intentional side of people's process so that when we provide facts and information, people are able to make an unemotional decision and a fact-based decision about our request. So thankful it's not today, and we get to have those conversations over the next 3 months. We get to, by the time we're done, that Know Your Fact page will be pages and pages. Our frequently asked questions will become our talking points in meetings as we clarify misconceptions and provide information on why we are making this request of our community. I believe strongly in the importance of all-day kindergarten, and we haven't run our numbers down yet, but by the time we get to, this is what this levy gets, our hope would be we could phase in all-day kindergarten and have a plan that we can share with our voters when if this is approved by the voters. So that will be addressed before we get to all of the specifics about the staffing as we look at our staffing, as we look at our staffing reports, and we put this together. It's not possible, obviously, without an additional building. But it is something that, as we put this together, has and continues to be a topic of conversation.
Thank you.
Yes.
I know you already said this once, but just to re-clarify, the bond portion of this, even though it's going to show the 1.9 new millage, it is actually no new millage, and it's not going to cost the taxpayers any additional money.
You're correct. You're correct. And we were able to do that last time with the 195 million and the 2 mil PI. So both enabled to do that. So that process works a little different from a bond standpoint. You work with the county auditor every year on that based off your debt schedule and what you have done and stuff. And so that's why another reason now it's optimal to do it is we can take advantage of that drop in millage that is coming forward.
Ryan, can you touch base also on interest rates and bond ratings and what that means in our borrowing ability?
Yeah, so unfortunately rates have gone up a little bit since 2018, and we issued most of that in early 2019 from that standpoint. But that's been all factored in. Actually, we factored in even if rates start going up another 50 basis points or another 100 basis points, and you think 100 basis points is 1%. So we factor that into to make sure we can stay within that no new millage standpoint. So, but with that, but as part of that process is our last time we've issued, we are AAA rated, which is the highest rating with S&P, or it used to be called Standard & Poor's, and that allows us to borrow at the lowest interest cost from that standpoint, or borrowing cost, from however you want to say it. That process is, and Mr. Valentine, I think Mr. Melody's been through that process, is painstakingly you prep for it for hours, and then you sit in front of people and in New York or Chicago, either video or whatever it may be, for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and really go over every little thing. And you think, well, it's just debt, so they're worried about our ability to pay back debt, but they also look at our general fund and how we're managing that from that process. And so they also look at voter approval. That's one thing that goes into it. We have a diverse economic base here in Dublin. So all those things kind of combine, but even just looking from the general fund perspective, which has, we don't pay debt back through our general or operating fund, but they still look at that very heavily and how we manage that, how we manage our growth and our enrollment. And when they make that thing, so to me is, I always like, it's a grueling process, but I always like to tell the story of the district through it. And when you get that AAA rating, yes, it's lower borrowing costs for our taxpayers out there, but is also, it's just another accountability measure of someone, an outside person, like, for example, our audit, which we've always had clean audits from that standpoint, look at us from an accountability standpoint to say, what are you guys doing there, and how well are you doing it?
I'm just curious, so when you say they look at the voter split or results, what does that look like for you? Like if it's a 70-30 split or 60-40, I mean, does it mean anything?
It's
to
more
us?
history related. Like
Okay.
over history, we've passed, majority of our terms. We did fail in 2011, but they, as we've gone over time, they look at voting history and look at it too. And the last time too, and they do look at a little bit of percentage from that standpoint. Was it really close? Was it 50.1 or whatever? We were at 58%, which is really, if you look around the state and stuff from an operating standpoint, and especially this last time in 2018 when we had the bond PEI and the operating all in one, for to get 58% approval, it is really well. It speaks to, I believe that's another, Dr. Marshausen talked about democracy, but I think that's another thing of accountability. If people voting and trusting us from that standpoint, and they voted yes, I think an overwhelming yes.
Any additional questions or comments? All right. Treasurer's comments? Is it separate from superintendent's comments at this point, or do you have anything additional that you need to add? Flip it.
We've talked about a lot, so any last questions on anything levy related? Just from my action items, there are two separate votes. One for placing the levy, operating levy of 7.9 mils, and the $145 million bond issue on the ballot as one vote. Just a reminder, as you as a board, to go forward with that. We do need a supermajority, so 4 out of 5 of you would have to approve it. Once this is done, there again, I would then go down to the Board of Elections. I would drive it down there. That's a different story, but and make sure that they certify it and stuff like this. And then we also have to, if you remember the last time, we also have State Department of Taxation, ODE stuff that we have to resend back through again after this approval. So all that really needs to be done. I know the real true limit, I think, is August 8th, but we really need to have this stuff and turned in by August 1st. So that's another reason why tonight was optimal, and the July 6th vote was optimal. It gives plenty of time to get everything, first of all, from a question standpoint from you guys, get everything answered in those, but also get everything filed with everybody and all the acknowledgments that we have, so we can get on the ballot from that standpoint. Also this evening is approval of our financial report for June. I'll talk about that in a second. We have one more person who is working our summer rentals on baseball fields that we need to approve so he can get paid for games he is working out there. And we do have a donation from the lacrosse boosters at Kaufman for new jerseys for the team, so that happened. The June 30th financial report you see is attached. As you can see from if you look at page 2 there, you can see from our general fund perspective where we finished compared with our 5-year forecast estimates. We are really close, within 0.2% in revenue and 0.3%, or I should say 0.3%, so it doesn't sound like 3%, 0.3%. We were a little over in our advances out. As you recall from advances, when you approved them on June 28th, or was it 29th, that those are quickly, we advanced them out primarily to our federal funds to cover any deficits, and then we advance it right back on July 1st as we get new revenue back in for reimbursement that we apply from the state. and stuff. And so those are really just in and out, but we still have to record it. But otherwise, we finished on track with what we kind of estimated. So any questions on that? And really, I think that hopefully that gives you as a board, when we look at this and we look at past years of how we finished, hopefully that gives you, when we're presenting stuff to you tonight to vote on, we have a very serious vote, to take on for a new levy, that the information that was provided hopefully is good information. That hopefully we know it's good information, that you trust what we're telling you, and going forward from there to make a very educated vote tonight.
All right, there being no additional comments, it's recommended by the Treasurer the Board of Education approve the attached resolution to proceed with an issue of bonds and levy of an additional tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation and certifying the same to the Board of Elections. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Melody. Before we vote, just to kind of summarize things, I think this is an interesting position. Scott and I have been here before. The three of you get your first opportunity at making this difficult decision. The one thing that I would say is, being a district that is so heavily reliant upon local property tax dollars, like we talked about before, it puts us in this very tough position. I was thinking about it today, and I was talking with a community member who had questions, and I struggle with it from a standpoint of knowing the difficult economic times, seeing what some folks in our community have been through, but at the same time realizing so many people move here or stay here because of the education that we provide our students and what the school system does in terms of the value of their properties and so forth. And so as I make the decision tonight, for me, really, I view it as an opportunity for the community to be able to speak and vocalize what they support, because we, unlike many other school districts around the state, have really essentially a democratic process in place that we're more so heavily reliant upon than others. So for the community, as they listen in tonight, there's a great deal of time that goes into this, both from our administrators on a planning standpoint, as well as the board members, in meetings ahead of time, research ahead of time, questions, emails, phone calls, you name it. This is not something that has just happened in a vacuum over the course of a few weeks. It has taken us great time to get to this point, and it really is only the start of a lot of more work, both in terms of educating the public as well as making some decisions one way or another. So with that said, call the roll, please.
Mrs. De Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes, I just, one comment that I'd like to make, just because it is the first time that we've been through a levy, and I just want to be clear that, my yes vote is a vote to place this on the ballot. It's not a vote for or against the levy, and I think that's important because, as Mr. Valentine said, this is where I think the district is really going to do a service to the community in providing all of the information necessary for each person, for their family, their child, to make their own decision. And so putting it on the ballot gives them the opportunity to do that.
Mrs. Gillis.
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Item C. It's recommended by the Treasurer that the Board of Education approve item 6B, approval of a resolution to proceed with an issue of bonds and levy of an addition. Oh, running through that. D, approval of the. Yeah, I'm going to go through. D would be approval of the June 30th financial report. E would be approval of baseball maintenance worker, and F would be approval of the donation. It is recommended by the Treasurer that the Board of Education approve items 5D, 5D, 5E, and 5F. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Gillis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Gillis.
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Department of Academics and Student Learning.
I am happy to share that both Dr. Schwanke and Mrs. Marple are on vacations this week, which we encourage in July. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Andres, who will carry the load for the entire department.
And I cut my vacation short just to be here tonight. Just kidding. I just want to talk quickly about two issues, one in the past and one in the future. On June 12th at our board meeting, Ms. Marple and I talked about our summer programs and our summer services. And now, a little over a month later, we are happy to report that nearly everything is done. It's a huge lift from our elementary and middle school summer school to our English learner summer reading programs, high school virtual, high school testing, extended school year services, other things that aren't necessarily ours, but that are on our grounds like life sports, or our Rise Up boot camp, which you'll see some pictures on there. Thanks, Cassie. Those things are done, and they're huge lifts for our teachers, for our parapros, for our administrators, but also it's a great opportunity for our teacher leaders. We have people, and I know I'm going to miss a few, but Emily Kramer and Kevin Masterson, Rachel Miracle, Diana Mack, Kelly Starkey, and Christina Hardy. These are teacher leaders who step up and they plan with us in the spring and implement programs that are excellent opportunities for the kids across the district. Again, some required, and some are things that we do because it's what we want here for our students. Things that make Dublin a special place and continue to drive this elite learning community. The future is, before we meet next on August 8th and August 9th, we'll have new teacher orientation. And I would ask Mr. Boney, I didn't ask him before, the number of new teachers that we're going to have that are coming to that program. But these are 2 days on August 8th and 9th here at Emerald Campus where we're going to be able to talk about curriculum and instruction and student services, technology, finance from Mr. Kern, human resources things from Mr. Boney. We'll talk about operations. Teachers will get R-Factor training, and they're going to get time with their same subject groups. These are great opportunities for our brand new people to come in and understand what we do here in Dublin, our culture playbook, and it's one of the most exciting times that I think we have in the district is that new teacher orientation opportunity. Any questions? I'll take them now. Thank you.
All right, it is recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve items. Okay. I'm getting thrown off with my papers here.
You can't go back to old school, can you?
No, I thought that I could. I was very aggressive about doing so. Mr. Stark.
Good evening. I have a couple items for the board's approval tonight. The first one is from our transportation department, and this is our approval for payment in lieu of transportation. This is payments to those families whose routes for private schools has been deemed impractical, and instead they will get payment in lieu. Our second item goes with the item that the board approved earlier this month, was for the Union County SRO. This agreement is with our Dublin City partners, and it is for a one-year agreement to supply SROs to our schools at an expense of approximately $344,000, which is only about a 4% increase from last year's cost. And those are our two items for your approval, unless there's any questions.
There being no questions, it is recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve items 8A and 8B. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Rigby. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0.
Before we turn it over to Mr. Boney as Executive Director of HR, there are three recommendations that I would like to address that are at the top of our HR agenda. First of all, the promotion of Mrs. Lori Marple from Director of Curriculum and Instruction to Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. This is a position that had been held by Dr. Bailey. that Mrs. Marple has been, during Dr. Bailey's transition to her what's next, Mrs. Marple has been doing taking on those extra responsibilities in her current job position. With the promotion of Mrs. Marple to executive director, which allows her in our structure to supervise other directors, we will not be backfilling Mrs. Marple's position. So with this change, we are, in essence, reducing one administrator from the senior administrative team. The responsibilities and roles that Dr. Bailey had played and had done for us as a district have been divvied up among other members of our administrative staff, mainly Mrs. Venny and her engagement piece, and Mr. Wolf in his student wellness piece and his student well-being, are more actively engaged in that equity and diversity work as we move from one person leading that to all of us leading that. So that change for Mrs. Marple is a reduction of a senior administrative position. I am proud to recommend that for both Mr. Boney and Mr. Stark, the extension of their contracts to a new 3-year contract starting in August 24 through July 31st, 2027. This recommendation going into a levy year understands that, first of all, we will always have an executive director of human resources and a chief operating officer. This recommendation is not committing the district to roles that we wouldn't have. It is also not committing the district to resources and to salaries that wouldn't be consummate with these roles in the event that a levy is not successful. These two individuals are who we need on our leadership team. And with passage of a levy, we're going to be asking an awful lot of them. And if the voters reject the levy request, the work that would be required from these two individuals is critical as we work with limited resources to be able to provide the highest possible education. So I know that there may be questions on why contracts are being given, as we're also at the same time asking our community for additional resources. Number one, it's a savings because we're not filling another position. And two, I think as we look at a team going into this, you want the best possible team serving our community, win or lose in November. So that's why I'm making those recommendations tonight. Now I'll kick it over to you, Mr. Boney.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you, Dr. Marshausen. Moving on in that same section, we have a few certified resignations. You'll remember that July 10th is the date that teachers can resign by. We had a few that came in late. We are almost filled for next school year. We're 96% of the way there. So working with Mr. Andrus, and in a few weeks we'll be welcoming a lot of new staff members to Dublin, which is, as he said, it's a great time in our work to be able to welcome new staff here. Moving on, there's substitutes that are on the agenda. Those substitutes work in our student support services area, and so they're paid at a rate that's different than those substitutes that we employ through the Educational Service Center. There's a request for extended days, and those extended days give us the needed time to open school and also close school for the upcoming school year. They're in roles that are necessary to provide student support services. The supplemental and pupil activity contracts, they do cover athletics and academics for next school year. There's also a document that explains supplementals that are needed for the upcoming term, along with those that we can remove. So twice a year, we go through almost an audit process where we remove supplementals, we might add some, and so this is that document that makes those recommendations. Moving on to the classified agenda tonight, there are 3 resignations, 1 retirement. The retirement is Catherine Smith. She's a parapro at Carr Middle School. She has 17 years in Dublin. And then there are 15 new hires on tonight, along with several salary changes. The last item are 2 stipends, and the first one is for technology integration leads, and this was erroneously admitted last year. It's on for your approval tonight, so it's a catch-up. The second is for virtual computer science. This is a revision of previously board-approved stipend to correct the staff member that's conducting that work. And that's all that I have on tonight.
Questions or comments, excuse me, from members of the board?
Just one question, Mr. Boney. How many teachers at this point look like they'll be in the training on August 7th and 8th?
We'll probably have close to 90, Ms. Rigby, and those are not all new, those are new staff members, but not new positions to the district. So new positions to the district were probably in the mid-20s, but through retirements, resignations, leaves of absence, we're hovering right around 90.
Just out of, not curiosity, but with the late hires that you end up having to make here, we traditionally take, obviously, a lot of pride in getting out in front and really being able to go out and recruit the best. How do we handle that? What does that look like in terms of trying to attack and fill those spots?
So, one of the things that we always try to do is make sure that we have applicants, some of those folks that have been vetted earlier in the spring who haven't landed jobs yet. And so we do have some of those folks that are new graduates. Sometimes you have individuals that are at charter schools who are not under contract. But we have this agreement with other school districts that we don't take staff members after July 10th. And so we really try to make sure that we find other ways around that. Individuals that are, again, new graduates, they're not under contract. Maybe somebody that's moving here from out of state. But we're down now to about 5 positions that we're trying to fill. And the ones that are left, they're kind of tough to fill, but, we're pounding the pavement, trying to make sure that we can find the right people for those roles.
All right. It's recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve items 10A, 10B, and 10C. Is there a motion? I will move it. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Any additional questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
No.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
And Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
I
Report-
would like just to make a
Yeah,
quick
absolutely,
comment
Scott.
that the reason why I voted no on the consent agenda is the early renewal of the administrator contracts. I will say that I do support and value the administrators. I just don't think at this time, when we are asking for a bond levy to be passed by taxpayers and or potentially reductions if it fails, that now is the time to do that renewal and extension.
Thank you. Reports from communications.
Good evening, Dr. Marshausen, Mr. Kern, and members of the board. I've been super busy with all the levy stuff, as I'm sure you guys know. So I'm going to give all kudos tonight to my team because Tanya and Keyburn have been keeping the department afloat, basically, and allowing me very generously and without questions to do the work that I need to do. With Dr. Marshausen and Mr. Kern, we've met multiple times. I've taken School Finance 101, I think, at this point, kind of figuring it out. I totally get where you guys are at. And actually, it's kind of interesting because creating the graphics almost is like therapeutic. It helps me learn it because I'm like putting the parts and pieces together in a weird way. We sent out a board recap last week after, or I guess 2 weeks ago after the July 6th board meeting via SMORE. That went to all district staff, and that was a huge success. We got tons of positive feedback from staff that were excited to have something to read, that they didn't have to sit and listen to a 2-hour video. They could just breeze through it, pick up the bullet points that were important to them. So we were excited for that feedback, and we're going to continue to do that. So there will actually be one that will go out tomorrow. So Tanya put all those on her calendar today, and that's something we'll carry and move forward. We had the 50-year reunion that I talked about last time on 4th of July weekend. We had a lot of local alum who were there, and then also alum who were there from as far away as Hawaii and Arizona. That came in for the weekend to enjoy their 50-year reunion. Keyburn, I didn't get to go to the event, but Keyburn said it was huge success and people really enjoyed it. Keeper and Tanya are also working on planning Convocations 1 and 2. So Convocation 1 will be August 1st. Convocation 2, when we welcome all of our staff back and teachers, will be August 14th. At the next board meeting, we will have the ribbon cutting at Jerome for the Jerome edition. So that meeting will be at Jerome. And just before the meeting, we'll do just a small ribbon cutting ceremony to celebrate opening that. And there will also be public opportunity to walk through and tour that space that evening as well. So we'll be sending that information out for people to come if they'd like to check out the new additions. And then next slide. Finally, Mrs. Vinny has been hard at work planning for the DCS University, which is a community engagement series that will have over 10 sessions. It'll be held August 9th here at Emerald Campus. The sessions range from athletics, academics, and wellness. It's essentially open to anybody in the community, so it's not just geared at parents. It's everyone, and it's for people to come and learn and sit in sessions to learn different things. So there's some that are geared towards parents, like how to use Infinite Campus, which is our new student information system. There's others that are just generally for them to understand, maybe if people have questions about what kinds of mental health things students are learning in classes or how we're integrating that into our curriculum, they can sit in on a session taught by our in-district experts on that topic and learn from them. There'll be children's activities, food available, and there's free registration available on our website. We've also been pushing it out on social media. So, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. That was a really nice touch when I got that email about with the board minutes. I mean, as I'm sitting, I know what happened. Obviously, I'm here, but I'm thinking it would be really cool. I know we have minutes, but maybe if there's a link somewhere for parents too, because I mean, it's that 2-hour thing, you know,
Yeah.
the rewatch. But I thought that was really nice because you can read at your own pace, at your own time.
Yeah.
It was really nice and
So-
well decorated.
Thank you. We are going to try to make them fit into so we'll create one board recap, but then, like you said, link it within, like, inside DCS or another family email. We just got to make it fit in the cadence because we don't want to blast emails to parents constantly, but they are going to get it tomorrow since we presented so much with a Levy update and all that kind of stuff tomorrow via SMORE. And then the rest of the year, we'll kind of just look at what's the next newsletter that we send, and we'll recap that board meeting, which we're usually sending newsletters every couple weeks. So either they'll get it from their principal one or they'll get it from the district one. But yes, we're going to share that and I think put it on our website too. So,
Two things for the board that I kind of need input on. Number one, we will be moving the August 14th board meeting to Jerome High School so we can do the ribbon cutting prior to the meeting and then hold that board meeting at Jerome, so that we will send a change of location for that meeting.
Do we want to do a change in time too, or
I think we can do the ribbon cutting at 6 and the board meeting at 7,
Okay.
and we should be okay.
just a change in location?
Just a change in location.
Okay.
That is the day of the teacher work days and the convocation, so we should be ready to roll. Mr. Stark, we should be ready to roll at Jerome.
At 7 o'clock, we would have been. Now that you're pushing it to 6, we might tap out. No, we'll be good. We'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other thing, and we've talked about this, I would like to make Wednesday, August 9th, a board meeting, if 3 of you are able to attend, for the community conversation to be an opportunity for you to come together and hear from the community. At that point, we will be, you will all have a preliminary list of what happens with voter approval, what happens with voter rejection. It can be conversations that we can also have there before your approval so that the community has some input to weigh in. So is there any objection to working with Mrs. Venny on a time on that evening that we could be together as a group to just hear from our constituents?
I will be out of town. I've got no objection to it. I will be out of town. It sounds like a great first time for Mrs. Gillis to be sitting in this chair.
I can't wait.
I was going to say, I am 50-50 as well that week, whether I'll be in town or traveling, but I will let you know as soon as I can.
I'm available.
I think I'm available, so.
It's good for me.
Okay, good. So we will send a notice for a board meeting that night, Mr. Melody. Hopefully you can join us, and Mrs. Gillis. It'll be a very easy agenda because we will call the meeting to order and then engage in public participation and then then close the meeting. So it's a great first one. Okay.
Yeah, there won't be any action items, but we will you'll see a special meeting notice from my office talking about it. So everyone will. I will make sure everyone knows.
I was really hoping you'd have to navigate through the paper sheet.
I mean, maybe for practice, we'll just do a whole paper one too.
Okay. I will let you all know when we send that notice. I want to work with Mrs. Venny to make sure that it's at a time that fits well within that 6 to 8:30 timeframe. Would you prefer earlier or later in the evening?
I would prefer earlier.
Okay. We'll make that happen since you guys are the bosses.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Moved by Mrs. Gillis, second by
Second.
Mrs. Rigby. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned.